Good morning to all my listeners, and welcome back to The Leadcast. Real leaders, real talk. Last episode, we got to know all about me, your host, and today we're kicking things off with someone us IA students would know quite well. Our very own principal, Mr. Griffin.
Hi, Gargi. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Now, to get us started here, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you chose this career path of becoming an administrator?
Sure. Yeah. A lot of people ask, have you always wanted to be a high school principal? What a unique position. What an odd job to maybe aspire to. And the answer is definitely no. That is not a job that I have always been yearning for. I come from a family of educators, honestly, if we go way back, and I did not want to go into education. I actually wanted to go into the medical field, and I did an internship in cardiac rehabilitation at Royal Oak Beaumont, now known as Corwell, and I kind of figured out that the healthcare field was not for me. Mm-hmm. I got a job as a substitute teacher, and I ended up really liking it, and that kind of got me my teaching certificate. I had enough credits to be a biology and chemistry major and minor, and those became then my teaching subjects. I got my first job teaching in Farmington. After 2 years, I was hired over here in Troy at the IA, and I think after 9 years I went into administration. After 6 years, I believe I started my master's degree. It took me about 5 or 6 years to kind of settle in and decide that I was ready for a master's degree. And when I was picking my master's degree, leadership did not necessarily stand out to me. I selfishly kind of wanted a master's degree so that I could get an increase in pay. Mm-hmm. And, I've always enjoyed learning and been a good student myself. So going back to school was natural and something that I kind of looked forward to. And, when I had to pick which program I wanted to go into, I didn't really think that I wanted to do counseling. I liked educational technology, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to pursue a degree in that. And that kind of just naturally led me to leadership. Leadership has been something that I've been involved in at many different levels throughout my time in education and outside of education. And pursuing a master's degree in leadership was just kind of a natural fit. And then kind of one thing led to another, and the opportunity presented itself here at IA, and I moved from teaching into administration, and it's been great ever since. I really love my job, and I love leading my school, and it's a job where I still really look forward to coming to work every day, so I really love it.
Wow, that's really cool. So you said you had enough credits to become a bio teacher. So did you teach like DP or like at the IA, or what did you teach?
Yeah, when I started, I was teaching in Farmington, and I taught a lot of low-level science classes. When I was in the medical field, I had just about enough credits to be a biology major and chemistry minor. I needed a couple extra classes like botany and analytical chemistry that I took at Oakland University to finish my degree. And then I started teaching a lot of generic chemistry, some co-taught classes with special education populations. I taught astronomy. That was a class that
Wow.
I did not take in college. I had very little astronomy knowledge, and in my interview they said, "Would you be ready to teach astronomy?" And I didn't really know what to say, but I said, "Yes, of course. I'd love that opportunity." Right? I mean, I had no idea how to even teach that class, but I was ready for the challenge, and I stepped up, and I wanted to make sure that they knew that. And after a couple years, there were some budgetary cuts in Farmington, and that's what kind of led me to pursue opportunities here in Troy. And I had no idea about the IB and the IA before really applying to work here in Troy. So the DP and the IB weren't necessarily at the forefront of my thought when I wanted to be a teacher, but I definitely fell in love with the concept when I was student teaching in Utica, who have their own IB program, and I learned a little bit about it, and I watched IA from afar, and then when the opportunity presented itself, a teacher who was in my cohort of going back to school to get their teaching certificate was already here at the IA. She spoke very highly of it, and I applied and got the job, and the rest is history. I was pink slipped from my job in Farmington because I was kind of low man in that hierarchy, and when they had those budgetary cuts, I got let go, and it was a really tough moment. I didn't really know what the future had in store. I was kind of discouraged to be in education at that time, and landing here in Troy at the IA was one of the best things that's ever happened to me, so it's been really great.
Yeah. Right. I mean, the fact that every leader has to go through problems, right? And, you displayed that, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. And just adding on, what would you feel like throughout the entire like journey of like, going to school, college, finding your way to the IA? What is a core memory that you have that you would want to share with us?
Wow. What I always used to tell my friends when I started at the IA, I had one student in my DP1 biology class my first year at the IA, and I was teaching about DNA replication. And DNA replication is a complicated process, lots of enzymes involved, and lots of big, long scientific words. And I had this one guy in my class. His name is AJ, and I still keep in touch with AJ to this day.
We met him at the alumni meeting.
Exactly right. Yeah, AJ is a proud IA alumni and always wants to give back to his community. And I remember AJ going up to my beautiful whiteboard drawing that I put up on the screen and explaining how this sequence of DNA replication reminded him of the French Revolution.
Oh.
And he compared this enzyme to this person in the French Revolution, and then this happened, and that's when, the two strands unwind. And it just really blew my mind that there were people out there who could think outside the box at a concept that was pretty common to me. Like, I knew all about DNA replication, but I had never heard it presented in that way. And that helped AJ kind of through that class, and he just needed to look at it through a unique lens and through his unique perspective. And that really helped me. Obviously there was a moment of like, oh my gosh, pinch me. These kids at this school are talking about DNA replication and the French Revolution together in their free time, in the back of the class. But it was a powerful moment for me to think about how people view the world and how people view abstract concepts and what they need to do in order to understand it. So it was a really powerful moment for me at the IA, and I'll definitely never forget that day with AJ in the back of my class because it was just a really memorable and powerful moment for me for the way that kids thought, something that I had never really thought of before, especially coming from my original job in Farmington.
Right. I feel like perspective is super important, especially when it comes to working with different people.
Yeah.
And I feel like you understood that so much from AJ, just like the way people think differently. That's
right.
amazing.
Yeah.
And like you said, you taught, bio, and then you became our principal. What challenges do you face day to day, and how do you overcome them?
Yeah. When you asked me to talk about leadership at the IA, I think of the two hardest parts of leadership for my job are, one, communication. Because I think personally that's something that I struggle with. I think I'm a good communicator, but the concept that I've noticed, being a leader is something that's still really hard for me, and I think it's a really hard concept in general. But it's the concept of having difficult conversations and talking to people about tough things. When students make bad choices, that's something that I have to talk about with that student, and I also have to pick up the phone and call their family sometimes and let them know about what's happening. And sometimes those are hard conversations, and I can't say that I like those moments. Having hard conversations is really difficult, but also, being in a leadership position, those hard conversations are inevitable, and they're not going to go away. And I can't hide from those conversations. I'm a procrastinator by nature. I know there's a lot of procrastinators out there, especially at the IA, and I procrastinate too. But I've really had to reprioritize having some of those courageous and difficult conversations more frequently and with less wait time, so that I don't just sit there and overthink it and overanalyze and say, well, what if this goes wrong, and create all these hypothetical scenarios in my head. Right. I've noticed that being an effective communicator as a leader is something that's really difficult. And then also, a difficult part of my job is leading that team of, 30 to 40 adults that are at the IA every day. We think of school leaders as being in charge of all the kids at that school, but I'm also in charge of those 30 to 40 adults who are there, who need leadership every day and who need to check in and who need to get their problems, resolved. Right. And one unique aspect of the IA, or my position at the IA, is me being a former teacher at the IA and now moving into leading those same people who I taught next door to for so many years. And thankfully, because of the wonderful teachers at the IA, they made that experience really incredible. And they showed their support for me and Mrs. Noss by, extension when she moved into administration as well. But, that has been one of the other hardest parts of the job, is leading your peers or leading a team that you were once a part of. And that's just a unique perspective that I had to take at the IA. So I've really had to take a step back sometimes and think about it not through my teacher lens, but through my administrator lens, which is a little bit different.
I feel like you can relate to being a teacher so much because you were a teacher, and like stepping up, I feel like you could represent those teachers. You could think in their shoes so much better.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, yeah, I feel like that's true.
I'll never forget how hard it was to be a teacher some days. And there are some days where, the copier is down. You've got 32 kids sitting in front of you. You're missing a kid who went to the bathroom and never came back. Your technology, you may be having difficulty with your technology, and sometimes you just need a helping hand. So I try to be that servant leader to help our teachers whenever they need it. And I try to keep my perspective as a teacher in mind as how I want to be an effective leader, right? Like, what did I need when I was a teacher and I was experiencing stress? What did I need in that moment? I try to be that for my school. And it kind of simplifies my job a little bit. And at the end of the day, when I'm having one of those difficult days, when my inbox is overflowing and I've got a line out the door, being able to help and solve people's problems really recenters me and helps remind me that I'm in the right place where I need to be.
Of course, like empathy is such an important characteristic for leaders. And the fact that, you show that every day, being a teacher and then stepping up to being a principal is just, I mean, that is a leader. So I feel like everyone can learn from you when it comes to leadership.
Empathy is a really important skill to have, to be able to put yourself in someone's shoes, to think about what they're going through and think about how you would have responded in that situation, or how somebody similar or close to you would have responded. I think that's a skill that is really important that good leaders need to develop, is empathy.
Right. And you talked about so many other adults who you worked with and stuff, but as for the students who come there every single day, the hundreds of students, what leadership tips would you give them, especially at the IA? I know they tell us so many like organizational tips, but just being a leader, what tips would you give the students just at high school?
Honestly, it's going to sound really cliche, and I think I've taken this new perspective ever since becoming a father, but honestly, literally the world is there for your taking. You can literally do whatever you want to. The world exists in your brain. It is what you want it to be. We are all on this rock floating in the middle of space, and we all just happen to be here. What do you want to do with your time on Earth? If you want to be a leader, and if you want others to follow you, and if you are that take charge kind of person, be that, right? Surround yourself with that. Read books, listen to podcasts like this one. Surround yourself with other leaders and watch what they do, even if they're adults, even if they're older than you. Watch how they lead. Think about leaders who you've had and what traits did you like about that. I've had good leaders. I've had not so great leaders, in sports and teams and clubs and jobs. They shape you too, right? How do you not want to be as a leader? So my advice for young leaders is to surround yourself with other leaders. I had great advice from the doctor who I was working with at Royal Oak Beaumont, again, before I even thought about going into education. After I finished my internship, his advice for us interns when we were all done was to hitch your wagon to a star. And that was a really weird concept for me because I don't have a wagon and I can't get to the stars. But hitch your wagon to a star means to, if you see a group of people moving in a direction that you want to get to, the stars, hitch your wagon to them and follow them right there because they're going where you want to be. When you surround yourself with those kinds of people, when you start thinking the way that those other leaders think, you literally can do whatever you want. You can be a leader. I'm not saying that everybody can be the president of the United States if they want to, but you can lead in any different capacity that you want to and be an effective leader by surrounding yourself with other good leaders. What leadership traits do you value? Surround yourself with those people. Yeah,
that was amazing advice. And to my listeners listening, that you should take that into consideration because I agree from the fact that every leader has their own like if you want to be a leader, you have to take the steps. And I think action is also super important for a leader.
For sure. Yeah.
But yeah. And moving on, when you're a principal, so you probably get so many emails of different students, teachers, or just people all across the district. How do you stay so calm and collected when your email box has more unread messages than a teenage group chat?
It's hard sometimes. There are not just are there emails of questions that come in. There's people that knock on your door. There's people who try to catch you in the hallway. When you sit down to try to respond to some of those emails, that's when you get a knock on the door and you get that famous question of, hey, do you have a second? Could be anything, right? Could be anything. But yes, I do. Come on in. Let's chat. What can I do to help you out in that situation? When I'm feeling overwhelmed, that's when I do need to kind of shut that door and I put on my do not disturb sign and I take 5 or 10 minutes for myself to kind of form a plan whether that's a plan for my morning, whether that's a plan for my day, my week, my month. I need to know what I'm doing next, because if I've got a long to-do list with no direction, it doesn't really help me. I just feel overwhelmed by looking at all these things I need to do.
Right.
I need to start grouping some of those things into what can I do right now? How can I feel accomplished? Because when you check those items off your to-do list, you're guaranteed to feel better.
It feels so good.
Yeah, right? So that is, when I'm feeling overwhelmed, I do whatever I can to check some things off my list. And that starts by reprioritizing some things. What can I take care of right now? I know that I'm going to need to do other things by this afternoon, but with a deadline of Friday, and I start to reprioritize my to-do list. And then I start to work at it, and then it starts to grow again, and then you work at it a little bit more. The work will always be there. So this was advice that I think Mr. Brinks, the former IA principal, gave me. He said, the work will always be there. The emails will always be there. Your inbox will always be full. But the people are waiting for you. They are outside, and kids need to see you in between classes, and teachers need a knock on their door and see if they need anything. That's the work. That is the work, not responding to, overloaded inboxes. And it's hard. It's easy to get carried away with sometimes when you get locked into that email mode and trying to solve those problems. But, the people are the business, and that is who I, as a leader, need to make sure that are being taken care of every day.
Right. And I agree so much, because I know checking off things off your to-do list is it brings me peace too, because I have a planner and I've been using it since middle school, and it is so helpful. Just writing things down is super nice for me. So I will do exactly like you. I will group things into prioritize things, and I feel like a lot of people do as well. But when you check things off, it's so nice.
Even if it's an easy task,
right?
It's just something that I get to check, and I'm feeling accomplished, right?
Yeah.
I use that positive momentum to keep rolling in my day.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. And so my next question for you is, what's one thing you'd love to see at, in the Troy community or just at IA in the next couple of years?
Things I'd love to see at the IA in the next couple of years. Wow. Well, we've got a pretty old school building. So, I got to tour the new Smith Middle School this morning, and It was incredible. It's going to be a really cool, awesome learning experience, and it's really going to shape how learning happens here in Troy. We are moving towards kind of a new era in what it means to be educators. Gone are the days where you've got your group of kids, you shut your door, you've got them for 60 minutes, and then you send them on their way to the next one. We're in an era of more collaboration, of more team teaching, of more shared spaces. Seating looks different in classrooms nowadays because the work looks different in classrooms nowadays. So I'd love a new school, right? If I can get into a new Smith Middle School for the IA, that would be really great. That's not in the cards right now, so I gotta be a realist as a good leader,
Of course.
But I'd really like to get the word out about the IA and what it means to be pursuing an IB diploma.
Yeah.
I think there's a few misconceptions about the IA that are out there, or misconceptions about the IB. I think now more than ever, we need to understand how our impacts or how our efforts, have an impact on the greater global society. I think now more than ever, our societies are interconnected more than ever before.
Right.
And I think the value of globally minded education is higher than ever before. So and that's what I'm working on as a leader. Some of the projects that Mrs. Noss and I are working on are greater outreach for the IA. The TSD Creative Guild has been wonderful at getting our word out. Nareda last year was everywhere, of course, talking all about the IA, and that's a goal for me, is to get the public to better understand what the IA is. We're not a charter school. You don't have to pay to come here. We don't select the students that come to our building. It's just a lottery. So I think getting the word out about the IA. I think we can brag about kids all day long, but I'd really love the public to kind of know what it is that they have as a resource for young learners here in the Troy School District. So that's a goal that I have for myself.
Yeah, of course. And talking about Nareda, she did so much. And getting the word out is also super important, because there are so many, I hear so many misconceptions too. Yeah. And it's wow, take a step back. It's not like that.
I know. Yeah. I just want to keep talking about how awesome the IA is and all the work that the great teachers do there, that the students do there. It's a really wonderful opportunity that Troy has to be one of the 4 high schools here in Troy.
Of course. And as a leader, I think you do that amazingly.
Thanks.
And so when you are a leader, and when you do your job, there's probably times where it's like you have to tell yourself, you have to motivate yourself.
Yeah.
So do you have like a personal motto or like anything that you tell yourself like every day, like, okay, I got this? Or it's just, because I said so, like, let's go for it.
What are my, some personal mottos? I don't know if this person is necessarily a leader, but, I tried to lead in the style of Mr. Rogers. I don't know if you know Mr. Rogers, Gargi. Mr. Rogers was
no, I have no idea.
On PBS many, many moons ago and kind of give way to Daniel Tiger. I don't know if you know Daniel Tiger. Okay, there we go, Daniel Tiger. Daniel Tiger was a character on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood back in the day, and Mr. Rogers was a public TV show, and that's what I watched growing up. That was my screen time. And Mr. Rogers led with empathy. Mr. Rogers led with caring about others, and his whole spiel was about being a good neighbor. So, when I make decisions as a leader, I try to think about what it means to be a good neighbor. I live in the Troy community. Students that attend my school are my neighbors.
Right.
I really care about this Troy community. And when I think about what it means to be a good neighbor, I think about looking out for the needs of all the populations in my school. I think about advocating for students that can't necessarily advocate for themselves. Being a good leader, I think, starts with being a good neighbor. And I think about Mr. Rogers a lot when I lead because he led with empathy. He led with kindness and intelligence and care for others. And to kind of harken back to that concept I talked about earlier, like, we're all just on this floating rock together. We got to be nice to each other and we got to take care of each other.
Right.
Being a leader means that there are still going to be some tough conversations that you have to have. But I think when you lead with your heart, I think when, people don't suspect you of having split personalities, when they know how conversations are going to go with you, I think that's evidence of a good leader. So
right.
I always tell myself, not like a what would Mr. Rogers do, but, I try to put myself in his shoes and be that empathetic leader to care about my community, because at the end of the day, I really do care about the community that I live in, the community that our students live in, and the learning environment that we're responsible for taking care of.
Great. That's amazing. That's amazing advice. And I really like how you put yourself into someone else's shoes. Again, empathy, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Exactly. So, since we're nearing the end of our episode today, I want to congratulate you for surviving the LeadCast hot seat.
Thank you. Yeah, it's hot in here.
And lastly, I want every guest to finish with a sentence. Leadership means this, right? So, like maybe like a 1 or 2 word or like a sentence of like, what does leadership mean to you?
Yeah. When I was in my leadership programs, we did a lot of leadership style analysis. What kind of leader do you want to be? What is leadership to you? How do you lead? And all of my surveys, all of my concepts, when I think about how I led throughout my life, leadership to me is service.
Amazing.
Leadership is serving others. Leadership is putting the needs of others before the needs of yourself. Leaders are there for a greater good. Leaders don't want credit. They don't want spotlights. They don't want accolades and claims to fame. They want other people to feel those things. Excuse me. And to me, leadership is service. And when I lead, I try to serve my community. I try to serve my teachers. I try to serve my students and to do what they might need. So to me, leadership is service. And when I remember, when I have those tough days and the day when those days get long and I'm ready to head home, I feel good about how I served my community, and that kind of fills my bucket.
That's great. That's amazing. And to my viewers, if you thought today's guest was amazing, wait till you hear who's up next. Hint, they will not be able to give me detention. So I want to thank Mr. Griffin for his amazing advice today.
Pleasure.
And our viewers for listening. Thank you so much. Your support means everything to me. And make sure to tune in monthly and listen to the LeadCast. Real leaders, real talk. Thank you.
Thanks, Gargi.